Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session of GETDigital. My name is Gary Tuig, and I'm the founder and managing director for the physio and fitness business, physfit.com. Throughout the week, as you will know, we've been joined here at GETDigital by many experts from across the industry, and we've been discussing different topics in GETDigital. All the topics are related to digital marketing. Today's topic that we're going to be covering is paid advertising. Now, yet again, we're joined by a fantastic panel, really great, wide different areas that they've worked in and different experiences, which adds a lot to the session we're going to have today. So just talking through a few of the members of the team for our group today, we've got Polle van Elsacker. Polle is a paid search specialist. We're also joined by Sara Kennedy. Sara Kennedy is the founder and director at Uplift Marketing. We have Mark Byrne. Mark Byrne is head of paid search and social at Greenlight. We're also joined by Conor Barron. Conor Barron is a digital and marketing CRM manager on Post. We also have Peter Scott, who's the deputy head of PPC, a paid per click at Wolfgang Digital. And of course, we have also Rochita, who is a senior international growth consultant at Google. And these people with a lot of insights and experience are going to be answering your questions here today. So I'd also just point this out to all those people who have joined us today, our audience. We really want to hear from you and hear your questions as well. So please feel free to put your questions in to us throughout the course of the session. And at the end, we'll hope to get through as many of your questions as we can. I've been asked to make sure to say to you that to use the Q&A function to do this. So you'll see the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So please use this. The chat function has been disabled, so don't use the chat function to do this, and then we'll get to as many questions as we can. But to kick things off, we're going to use the questions that we've received over the course of the week, and I'm going to be putting them to the panel here today to get their feedback. So let's kick off first with Sara Kennedy, if I can. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Great to have you here. Sara, as I mentioned, you're the founder and a director at Uplift Marketing. I see you've got a lot of experience working with many different companies because of that. You've worked with the likes of Kyo's. You've also worked in the hospitality and finance industry as well with Apple Green and Mount Juliet as well. So lots of different companies and interesting insights you'll have from that. The question I'd like to put to you, and I think what we can do is we can put a question and then other members of the panel can add to that as well if they feel they'd like to add something. But in your view, Sara, how much time and money do businesses or people need to be spending to drive significant value through their paid advertising? Do you have like a metric you use, or how do you advise on that?
So I suppose when I look at this with a company, whether it's a sole trader, whether it's a company that has a marketing department or a company that are trying to do marketing on the side, it really, really depends. And I know that sounds wishy-washy, but let me bring you through my thinking on this. So if you're going to do it, and if you're going to in-house and do your own paid advertising, if you're going to do it, you need to do it right. So what we do know is with paid advertising, it's a 24-hour business. So what I see with a lot of companies, they might set it up and leave it and maybe dip in and out of it once a month, which isn't enough, because you have to optimize what you know, setting it up isn't enough. The meat and the generation of revenue and leads, it comes from the optimization that you do while you're in motion. So in terms of how much time you can spend, so I'll give you an example. So I have a sole trader, has a fantastic bridal boutique up in Donegal, absolutely amazing. And she's doing that when she started, she was doing it as she could, right? And what she realized was that, okay, I'm spending all this money, you know, if that was, and that's my dog, apologies, if I was spending this on a piece of advertising with a magazine or whatever it might be, I would be really pushing them to make sure that that delivers. And I said, exactly. So sometimes when it's on your own head, you don't take it as seriously. So what we agreed was that she would put in what was manageable and what was reasonable for her to do. So in that case, what she had a weekly schedule where she would check for 15 minutes a day, but at the end of the week, she would then go in and dedicate, if it was 45 minutes even, to optimize her accounts. And this was just for PPC, and social was treated in the same stream. She had to put a lot more into social because that's where her revenue was coming from. So that worked well for her. However, I've worked with small, medium-sized businesses whereby they might have somebody that maybe isn't an expert that's being put in charge of something that's quite, you know, it's quite a beast. It's quite technical, and they're being asked to do it. And either it can be side a desk, or it ends up taking over their full-time job. So because you've so many moving parts, if you're going into social, you could be trying to manually manage 6 different platforms, plus, you know, your PPC efforts, plus your SEO efforts. It's not really something that you do side of desk, and you might pick a little bit to and fro during a week. So as I said at the start, if you're going to do it right. So if you decide you want to do it, you need to have a structure of time. And even if that is a dedicated hours for consistency, then that's what it is. That's what works for you. But secondly, if you feel I'm going to be ending up spending all of this money, I don't really have the time to do it, and I'm going to be doing it on the go, it means you're not going to be doing it right. So I would encourage in that case for it to be outsourced, whether that's someone who knows, it might be somebody, there's so many brilliant freelancers out there that are great and will be fully focused, and you're quite a big fish in a very small pond, or give it to an agency who will do it really quickly. I don't know whether, it depends on your business, it depends on the industry you're in, on how much exact time you need to spend, because you need to be led by the data, you know, follow the numbers. So I suppose it's a roundabout answer, Gary, too, but it's not simple.
I understand. No, I get exactly where you're coming from, and kind of depends on the industry, as you say, and the person in there, and how much support they have, and what stage they're at as well in their growth. I might actually ask that question as well, if I can, because obviously a lot of this money is funneled towards Google that we're talking about here. I might ask Rochita from Google. Rochita, as I mentioned, you're Senior International Growth Consultant at Google. What's Google's take on, what do you advise to your clients? And
yep, absolutely. Thank you for the question. And I mostly agree with what Sara said, that it has to depend on a lot of factors, the industry that you come with, the time that you have to be able to provide to the service, and what is manageable and reasonable for you. I'll give it also a shadow of automation to this whole concept, because now a lot of tools and products and processes that are developed by companies like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, automation becomes a key area there, where let the machine learning do its job, just do the basic setup and give it time, and the machine learning will reap the results that you're looking for. So automation is a key factor to look at when you're deciding how much time are you ready to give. If you do not have enough time, steer towards automated tools and processes. If you do want control over your campaigns, you might make it a little more manual in nature. The second aspect I want to touch upon is that when it comes to budgeting and deciding how much is the right budget to start with, of course, it has to be reasonable based on your turnover, based on your profits, based on your marketing objectives and your business objectives. A lot of tools, I'd say, have an area where if you spend a certain amount, or if you have certain number of clicks and conversions, is when you can unlock additional features. So depending on how mature you are in your digital journey and where you think that maturity is going to reap additional results for you, you might have to tweak your budget accordingly. And that's how we advise our customers and clients, that start with what's reasonable and what's manageable for you. But to be able to reap 100% results, you might have to tweak your budgets and get those features unlocked.
Okay, very good. I made a note there on automation. It's a topic I definitely want to cover today, and I'll go back to that, Rochita. I might hand over to Polle here at this point. I know it's linked to what we've just discussed, but just kind of thinking as well behind it. I just kind of delve a little bit further on this one. Like, you're a paid search specialist. You work a lot in automation, particularly as well. And I'm wondering, do you think that companies, because you're working from the retail side, let's say, you're in the company itself, do you think that companies who do outsource their paid advertising to agencies can ever truly get to understand paid advertising and the landscape, and therefore really understand their own business as part of that?
I do think that it's the role of the agency or the outsourced party to really explain what's happening as well. Although we have a lot of factors that are unknown, and especially increasingly with Google Ads, there's a lot of they call it black box automation, but basically tools that the platform offers that allow you to basically do a lot more work a lot more efficiently. So in that sense, the reason to outsource may be smaller, or the argument to outsource, because a lot of the things that were costing a lot of effort 10 years ago now cost a lot less effort actually using the features that Google Ads now offers. An example is DSA ads, dynamic search ads, where basically you offer a good landing page and the keywords are basically already offered by Google to advertise on. So Google looks at the page and thinks, okay, those queries are relevant for the user. I'm going to basically serve that page at a certain bit. So I think that's great, this automation, because it definitely makes the platform more efficient, and it allows also smaller advertisers to actually tap into ways of advertising that were more difficult a few years ago. I do think the difficult factor is that you want to have a certain level of control still, and you can't just trust Google with everything. I mean, there's a clear incentive that Google has as well in this platform, of course. So I think it's super important to have the number side right. What are you willing to pay for the goal that you have in mind? What is that goal also worth in long term? And that is basically the minimum amount of information that you as an advertiser should have to start advertising on Google, regardless if you do it yourself or if you outsource. And then in terms of the outsourcing part, I think it's also important for advertisers to know what kind of checks or controls they have in Google Ads itself to see what work is being done. So you can have a look at the account history, you can have a look at the auction insights, so external factors in Google, in auction insights that see, okay, this amount of advertisers actually into the auction that I'm also in, and account history as a very, well, rather intrusive way for the advertiser to look into what is actually being done in the account. Is it automated actions? Is it actions from users that are actually doing the work for me and I'm paying to do that work for them? Okay. So they should be aware, at least if you want to be transparent and if you want to build a long-term relationship as well as an agency with a client, I think you need to be transparent about these kind of factors. And in my experience, also working as an independent contractor, it just helps to explain what you're doing and what the options are, what Google is doing as well, what we can influence, what not. Okay. One last thing, to be honest, I think it's super important as well, this landing page thing, and it's also related to another topic, I think. Basically, advertisers have less and less control in the platform. That's true. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It's just how it is, how the whole industry is evolving. But the factors that you do control, there's mainly the tracking part, so the numbers part, and the on-site experience. You should be 100% focused on that to make sure that those levers that you do have, you have control over, and you invest in those as well as an advertiser.
Okay, thank you, Polle. I'm going to move over now to Mark Byrne. Mark, you're head of paid search and social at Greenlight agency. Again, you're working with lots of different companies, I assume lots of different types of businesses. So I'd be interested to get your view on this. Just in terms of paid advertising, kind of what do you, I know it's going to be different depending on the company, but what do you find kind of works best for you, your company and your clients, looking at the difference between using Google Ads or going down the route of social media advertising? And also, do you have a preference for using different channels depending whether it's B2B or B2C type businesses that you're working with?
Hi Gary, yeah, I'd say going back to Sarah's answer a few minutes ago, so it comes up a lot in paid media, but it does depend. So I'll go through again and kind of clarify certain things. But so for us, I work for an independent agency called Greenlight. So we work with lots of different clients across different verticals, B2C, B2B, lots of retail. And generally it's performance focused, so looking to drive, say, sales for clients. So for us, when we're looking at what platforms or channels we want to include in the mix, we tend to focus at the bottom of the funnel. So looking at the full funnel, imagine being 3 segments. At the very top, we have awareness. Generally here, we're looking to drive impressions, say. Next layer down would be consideration. So here, looking to drive traffic or clicks. And then thirdly, conversions, looking to drive sales or leads, for example. So that would be our classic funnel. And then when we're working with our clients, the kind of first port of call is to, okay, where's our audience? Where's the demand? Where's the intent? So for us, 9 times out of 10, it would be paid search, so Google Ads, because this is where consumers are coming to a platform, literally putting their hands up and saying, I want X, Y, or Z, and then we're there to make sure we're bidding on that particular keyword to serve them an ad, bring it through the site to convert. So generally we'll build it up like a house, say, or foundation. So we'll start at the very bottom. We'll maximize paid search, because for the most part, search isn't, it will get to a point where there's diminishing returns. So we'll maximize the amount of available high intent traffic. Say, for example, I'm selling bass guitars, for example. There will get to a point where I want to buy a bass guitars on sale, for example. Keywords are maximized, there's not as much traffic left because there's only a finite amount of searches. We'll need to move up the funnel into other broader searches. So then we'll move into more generic searches, and then with generic searches, you get to a point where it's people who are more so in the research phase and less likely to convert, and then eventually you don't get the return anymore. So you need to kind of balance that. So generally, how we look at it is we'll maximize out search. We'll try and get as much high intent relevant traffic through the site, and then we'll get to the point, okay, search is kind of maximized here. Looking at our target ROAS, our target KPIs, what can we do to widen the funnel? So then we'll move into other platforms too. And generally, if we're looking to widen the funnel, that's so want to get more people at the awareness phase, driving impressions, we'll generally look at paid social. So paid social is perfect for that because we can find people who are interested or potentially interested in what we're selling, but we can engage with them in a visual or a way that's more compelling, say, than a text ad that wouldn't work as well for the impression side of things. So for the most part, that's how we would work, and it's generally starting at the bottom, looking for that intent and building up from there. And definitely your second point was around looking at the difference between say B2C and B2B. I think for the most part, it can be overcomplicated because at the end of the day, it's consumers at some level looking for something, and we can use these different platforms online. The challenge with B2B generally is that there's just less conversions to work with. So for us to get the most from automation, we need to have a decent volume of conversion data coming through. If we have conversion data coming through, we can help inform the smart bidding or automation to help it work a bit better. So for us, if we don't have the conversion volume come in, we'll look at softer KPIs. So instead of, say, it might be a qualified lead for a larger tech company, we get, I don't know, a couple of those a month for some clients, but we just look at softer KPIs. So can we look at your white paper downloads or the various other metrics, and then start from there, start at the bottom and then build up from there.
Okay, very good. So here's my mum calling me actually. I thought I had that on silent. A question, this is for the group actually. It's just, you touched on it there, and I just there's no specific person I'm putting this one to, but we're all consumers here. Yes, you're all working in paid, and I'm just interested to understand, and feel free anyone to jump in here. When you're shopping on Google search and you're looking for something particular, how do you do it? How do you all do it? What's your modus of operandi in terms of shopping on search?
I tend to go with the organic ads. It's like a nod to whoever's running the paid ads, just to not waste their budget. So it's okay. That kind of solidarity. I'll go with the organic ads.
But if you didn't work in the industry, like, what's your preferred route to doing? I'm just interested to see what you guys do.
Do you assume it starts on search though? Sorry,
if they're starting on, so they've decided to use Google search to look for a product that they want. You've decided, sorry, let me put it this way, you've decided at this point in the funnel or in your journey to look on search. What kind of way do you shop? Conor, I'll put that to you, Conor.
Yeah, I actually think it's a really interesting one. I think we as an industry can be very guilty at focusing on last click because it's the easiest. And so we don't actually focus on that kind of upper funnel and whatever. Like, I mean, I think a few people have kind of touched on it already. It's what's the behavior you're trying to drive, be it a sale, white paper download or whatever, and what's that worth to your business, in terms of being really clear. And I think a lot of businesses, big and small, are guilty of kind of not being really clear on, well, actually that white paper download, is worth X because 10% of them are going to convert, and whatever, you can work out what that's worth to your business or whatever. And I think for me personally, if I think about my own kind of buying behavior, I'm definitely influenced by, you know, videos I see, by kind of display ads, by, you know, social networks, by the offline stuff. And I think, again, as digital practitioners, we're often guilty of focusing on digital is the only thing that exists. And, you know, I mean, okay, maybe we're a slightly bigger business than kind of some of the businesses here today. But, you know, like when we go on TV, you know, our search cost per acquisition drops. And, you know, that's not because we've done anything clever from a PPC point of view. It's because TV has driven that. So I think it's really important to understand the human behavior that exists, and maybe focus a little bit less on the channels and more on the people and the behavior. Sorry, that's probably not an answer to the question I was asked.
Oh no, it's interesting. No, it's a very relevant topic. And Conor, you work in Post, your digital marketing and CRM manager in there. Just on, do you use LinkedIn much on Post?
Depending on the campaign, yes. I mean, look, you know, we operate across a range of different verticals in terms of B2B and B2C. I mean, it would have been something that we focused on in kind of a previous life. I worked in the utilities industry, and we would have focused on our industrial and commercial customers there. Who, you know, these are our you know, big energy users, data center, you know, kind of owners and stuff like that. And, you know, you'd have 150 customers using the same amount of energy as the whole of all of the households in Ireland, you know. Yeah. And LinkedIn was an incredibly valuable platform for that. And again, I think there was a panel on Monday where Rosie Clancy from Oracle was kind of talking about kind of social selling and that. And again, I would kind of look at it as a mix. So, you know, you're using a certain proportion of organic content being shared by your industry experts. You're then pairing that up with your paid advertising to kind of ensure that there's that kind of consistency of message. And then, you know, once you've done that, you're kind of driving those people in the right direction. So I think LinkedIn can be a very expensive channel if it's used really badly. And it can
one of the questions I was about to ask you, because that's one of the questions that was raised with, and I was going to ask you that. Do you think it's an expensive channel?
I mean, again, I think that's a relative term, right? So, you know, if a sale is worth, you know, €1 million, you know, it's a very cheap channel, or can be a very cheap channel. You know, if you're trying to sell a book of stamps worth, you know, whatever, 20 quid, maybe it's not the right channel to use. But you know, I think for me, it all comes back to understanding what value it can bring to your business, rather than kind of having a blanket answer. I mean, if you look at it compared to a Facebook or whatever, your CPCs are going to be higher, but it's not Facebook. That's not what it's there to do, you know.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to, Peter, I'm going to have a chat with you now. Peter, you're Deputy Head of Pay-Per-Click at Wolfgang Digital. The question I have for you, and just because you'll be working for many different clients in your role, and I was wondering, how important do you find the level of customer service support or account support that you're getting from the major advertising players, determining where you focus your paid advertising spend? Does that impact at all on how you operate?
Yeah, it does a little bit. I suppose Google, I suppose with their newer smart bidding options and smart campaigns, are providing less support, just because it's that black box. They're automated, they're really good solutions, so there isn't as much I suppose customer support required, but they do offer support in terms of the latest innovations. We get access to betas ahead of other competitors, and some of them are really good. So like one of the best ones that we saw in the last couple of years was smart shopping. Everyone has access to it now, but it's a fantastic tool, especially for, I suppose, small retailers. It's a case of plug and go. You just need a feed. If you have Shopify, you can set up a merchant center. It's really straightforward. I'd encourage anyone to use it. It's a great campaign. Facebook and LinkedIn, how much support they give, like it's minimal. Even clients with big spends don't get a huge amount of support. Google would probably be the best of the major players. But I suppose as we move more towards the automated campaigns, there isn't that support required. It's very straightforward to get them up and running.
Have you ever experienced, and this again, I'll ask you this first, Peter, but feel free to jump in here. Anyone here ever had their company banned from Facebook or experienced that or been on the end of that?
I have seen stuff. I have seen people get their Google Ads accounts suspended over you're not allowed to advertise certain products if you have certain things on your website, like CBD oil isn't approved for Google Ads, elements like that. You can get your account suspended. And Facebook has something similar as well.
Okay, and you were able to get it back quick enough, hopefully, then when that did experience that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, Peter, about Google Display Network. Is that something that you focus on in Wolfgang?
Yeah, we do. The Google Display Network, like I'm on the fence. I used to think that it wasn't great, but like I suppose coming back to the automated campaign solutions, there's like a smart display. You can pay for conversions. I have seen it work really well. I suppose it's kind of 50-50. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't work at all. And then the other element is Google's always happy to take your money, so you could spend a lot of money on one of these automated solutions, and it won't work, but sometimes it does, and you can get excellent results. I suppose you have to test all these different campaign types within your accounts, and so that's one of the benefits of working with an agency. They'll know which will work for you. If you're, I suppose, B2B, B2C, retail, or lead gen, like there's obviously different options and what works best for you.
Okay, you mentioned there as well Shopify and running Google Smart campaigns directly from Shopify. Would you recommend setting it up in Shopify or setting it up in Google Ads?
Setting it up in Google Ads and having the merchant center, but I suppose Shopify as well, you can have dynamic product ads for Facebook running as well. It doesn't require much, like you wouldn't even need an agency to do it for you. You just need it set up, know what your budgets are, and like it's an excellent solution for small to medium businesses.
Right, thanks very much, Peter.
I'll just add something following Peter's conversation on GDN, how Google Display Network essentially helped. And I think a lot of marketing agencies and clients have turned towards programmatic, which is, I'd say, an extension of the GDN version where you can tap into inventory, which is just not Google specific, but inventory that exists outside. And then you can also tap into audience levels, which are very granular in nature. So essentially, literally being able to for example, target someone who's looking for a new home as an example, and then using programmatic advertising to get into formats which are not particularly available in GDN, and also being able to tap into certain audience types, which essentially GDN wouldn't offer. So I'd say depending on, again, which phase of maturity the client is in, GDN is a great option, more so from an upper funnel perspective to be able to drive that awareness and consideration for your products, and also drive an omni-channel strategy. I think GDN works really well because any form of visual advertising always stays top of mind. And that's how maybe you're not going to purchase it in store, but you actually go to the store and do an offline purchase at the back of it. So if you look through the entire funnel where GDN supports you the most, it's definitely upper funnel and then more on the omni-channel strategy to drive in-store conversions.
Okay, thank you, Rochita. I'll go back to Polle on this one. Polle, do you have a kind of tips, your kind of top 3 tips for optimizing paid advertising campaigns? It's a tricky one to get them down into 3, but I put you on the spot.
So I think the 3 main, again, I'm going back to levers, so the things that you can control.
Yeah.
So it's your targeting, it's your bidding, and it's your creative. So those are the 3 main things that you should be looking at. And what to optimize for. I mean, for targeting, if you do keyword targeting, then you need to make sure that you have different match types and those split out so you can see easily the performance per match type. And also have the DSA campaigns running as set, because that will probably deliver a lot of new keywords as well, maybe also negatives that are not performing that you will then exclude. So for keywords, look at the search term report and be proactive on adding negative keywords, stuff that you don't want to be found on. And if you spend your budget on exact, then open up other match types or DSA more, so you can expand your library there, test more keywords. If they work, book them as exact again and exclude the stuff that's not working. That's for the keyword part. For the bidding, yeah, smart bidding is the way to go, I think, for many advertisers, because it's really hard to duplicate the data set or interpret the signals that Google has in your own bidding. I mean, unless you have like really small data, like Mark already mentioned, if there's not enough conversion data, or you have unclear goals, I don't know, branding, yeah, maybe you can step away from that. And also for your own branded keywords, I still think manual bids are good actually, because you put them at 2-3 cents and you are the best advertiser. You probably don't need to have much bidding there unless it's search impression share, but that's really the exception. So for bidding, yeah, make sure that your input data is correct so that you know what you're looking for. You track your transactions correctly when you do an e-commerce website. So you take the returns into account as well. You do offline conversion uploads. We have true realistic conversion data there. And then in terms of the bid strategies themselves, yeah, make them also a little bit granular. So you may have, I like what Mark said about the funnels. So there's some keywords that are clearly more discovery keywords. So they are not going to perform that well at all, probably because people are not that far in their decision-making process yet. Those kind of keywords, I would give a different bid strategy than those that are super close to purchase, actual product names or yeah, very concrete kind of terms. And in terms of creatives, the last pillar, definitely have multiple ads already in your ad group. So you can test at least one responsive ad with a lot of snippets. And I would also actually go for multiple responsive search ads, but then with snippets that are themed in a certain way. So snippets that are more price sensitive, snippets that are more trust related, for example, snippets that are more aimed at promotions. And that's still a way that you can actually test which responsive search ad is working best, while still using this combination of different ad elements that Google tests for you. Okay. So that's, I think, the main things. But again, super dependent on advertisers. But yeah, those 3 pillars are the main things that I would focus on. Okay,
thank you, Polle. Sara, I'm going to go back to you on this one. Pinterest hasn't come up yet in the conversation. I'm just gonna, I don't know if it's something you use personally, you recommend for your clients, but just get your view on Pinterest as a channel, whether we should be focusing on it.
I've done about 4 audits in the last week for various different businesses, and what's trickling in is Pinterest. And I think we think about Pinterest as this really fluffy social channel, but it's not. It's a visual search engine, except, you know, and there's a huge audience there. They're very proactive and they're there with extreme intent. And I'll give you a story myself if I'm going a bit off piece, but when I got engaged about whatever it was, 2013, I went straight to Pinterest. I planned my wedding on it. I created all my boards. I shopped there. So before I went out and touched a supplier or anything like that, I had it planned. I had all the pre-planning done here. Same when I went to do my house renovation or buy a house, it's all done in Pinterest, right? And if I can find the supplier via Pinterest, I'm going to go with them. I found my wedding dress through Pinterest, right? I could not get it in Ireland. I could not get it in EU. I went to America to pick it up, right? So I bought the dress there, found through Pinterest, right? So that's the power of Pinterest. And I'll always say it's always the one that, even, you know, teaching students, etc., that it's kind of gets overlooked a little bit. It's kind of just parked here as this thing. It is a powerhouse of high intent shoppers that are looking to be inspired and looking for the answers to their questions, particularly around lifestyle. I'm also seeing a lot more coming through in Pinterest B2B. I'm finding a lot more business owners. I'm finding a lot more on the business side going there for inspiration and for solutions as well. So it's one of the channels that I am specifically spending a lot of time with my clients to see exactly how they can leverage from it, whether they're actively posting and they're building up organic boards or whatever that might be, or whether they're just purely accessing an audience through advertising. So we're looking at that, and it feels like it's something that we should have been doing a long time ago, but it has been overlooked for a long time. But just thinking of it as a visual search engine is a way to really retune the mind.
Right. Can I jump in there as well? Because look, we've been doing it for maybe 3.5 years, and like there's a huge amount of value in it because nobody's playing in it. It's like this
so cheap.
it's so cheap, like it really is. And like
more it is now.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, you know, I'm all about sharing the wealth. No, but look, I mean, I think, you know, the lack of competition, they're really good on the creative has to be super clean. You know, they've got really, really specific guidelines on creative and whatever, so it fits and it looks native. Like, we've driven huge results. It's not going to replace the other platforms because it's still relatively small. But like, I mean, in terms of something like a small change that you can make to your paid mix at the moment, that's going to like bring down your CPAs. Like, yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough. And, you know, we're using it for financial services. Like, it's not as if it's, you know, like the wedding dresses and fitness and fashion and all the rest of it are what springs to mind. But it works just as well for FS, you know.
Right. Okay, interesting. Is anybody looking at Triller yet as a new platform? Anyone here? No? No? Okay. And anyone, and I'll put this again to I'm sure some of you are active on TikTok, no doubt. Anyone like to kind of give me their insights or views on TikTok as a channel?
Yeah, we've been testing it probably for the best part of this year. So across a different retail clients. So one of the larger clients would be, say, a well-known high street fashion retailer. But so we've been running kind of like-for-like content both on TikTok and Facebook. Generally, the goals for this client are they want brand uplift, they want awareness, but a secondary KPI would be they keep a second eye on, say, view through sales. So even though it's not a core metric, they still want to see some sales coming through on the activity. So we have been testing various formats, so in-feed ads on the platform. We can run, say, similar types of targeting that we would have on other paid social channels that we're used to. So we can run the demographic targeting and interests. We can use CRM lists. We can make lookalikes. So all the stuff that we're used to. But what we're finding is it's particularly strong at the engagement side of things. So by default, the ads will run with the audio on. So if we're running any kind of video, we tend to get better performance. So we get longer view rates and as a result, higher engagement rates. And similar to what Conor was saying about Pinterest, it's also peanuts. It's really, really cheap. So we're getting much cheaper engagements and lower cost per click through the site. I think it's two things, because consumers are engaging more generally with higher engagement rates, will get rewarded. So we'll get lower CPCs, but at the same time, many brands haven't really dipped their toes yet. So we're finding that it's not as cluttered, say, when it comes to advertisers, whereas Facebook's always the first port of call. TikTok, I think people are still a bit more tentative and unsure, how can our brand get involved here, that kind of thing. But I would say it's still, as an ad platform, nowhere near as mature, say, as Facebook, whereas Facebook, we'd easily run, say, full funnel activity from the first impression through to a sale, whereas TikTok, it can't actually track clicks and sales that happen outside of. So once someone clicks through, can't follow, it can't check that view through sale. So for us, great upper funnel, great at engaging, especially younger audiences, even though we're seeing older audiences, especially in the last few months, get involved. So in a nutshell, I'd say cheap. It works really well up the funnel for driving engagement, and also for us, we're using it to essentially send cheap traffic through the site that we can then retarget across, say, paid search across other social platforms and programmatic as well.
What do you think of the creative on TikTok? Because
so how we're looking at it is, like, some of our clients, they wouldn't have massive budgets, and if they're to run type of Instagram activity, they feel like they do need like a PR firm or someone to run this very polished activity, or get us to do it. But for TikTok, we're working with a brand recently. They're a tiles brand, and there's loads of creative on TikTok. It's the hashtag oddly satisfying or hashtag something trades, but there's like satisfying videos of people doing grouting or people doing various stuff in the house, but it's a bit of a rabbit hole. It's quite engaging, and that's what they're like, okay, cool, we can easily do this. We can do it in our showroom quite quickly and easily. It's a 30-second video we could do on our phone. So that's, for them, that's a way for them to get cheap content created really easily.
I think that's actually the key. I think it's the key. What I'm seeing with advertising on TikTok is the performance that yields the best result is the one that looks like a user has actually made it. I'm saying that there's still that TikTok feels very special to the users. It feels like this is their hive. So when they see polished advertising, they just don't want to see it. This is their kind of, we came over here to get away from all that clutter over there. So I think it is important that, like that with the tile one that that it almost looks like, even if it is an ad, exactly, it looks like it's been made for that purpose.
It's the uncle dancing at the wedding, right? Like, you don't want to be the uncle dancing at the wedding, right? And, like, I see two things on it. I see like that kind of more lo-fi, and again, like, this isn't the first time this has happened. Like, we'd have seen this kind of brands doing the kind of lower fi stuff with other platforms as they kind of reach maturity and whatever over the last little while. But the other thing I see is incredible kind of creativity. And like, I mean, if I was a creative agency, I would be on TikTok, like, mining these people, because, you know, they're producing stuff. Like, there's a great one. A college kid did an ad for 7-Up in her dorm room. And like, it's just unbelievable. And like, this thing is Super Bowl quality, like, ad. And, you know, these kids are kids. I sound very old. But you know, like, I mean, the quality of the creative has been, you know, is just out of this world. And I think it's a challenge for brands, you know, with that kind of maybe traditional agency model and you know, the creative agency and whatever, is how do you create content at that level, you know, without going into 6- and 7-figure kind of production, you know, costs.
Say that, Conor. I literally only about 3 weeks ago gave a talk to a creative agency for that very subject, and my message that I landed with the creative agency was, stop taking a brief from your clients, get your designers to immerse in TikTok stories and start building content for that, because the struggle a lot of businesses have with making a reel, making a TikTok, it's still fiddly, you know, it's hard to create those amazing videos. But like, I showed what, say, Jason Derulo's doing on TikTok to a creative agency, and they were like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, you know, there is a production behind it, don't get me wrong, but no more so than what you're going to blow on a full end video that you're going to lash up on YouTube and probably get no engagement. Designers have to start immersing themselves as the user in social platforms and build from the bottom up rather than from the brief down.
Couldn't agree more. I think, you know, I think that idea of the nice 60-second long 16:9 TV ad with the kind of traditional narrative arc and whatever is dead. You know, we now need to, oh, well, sorry, that's not true. It's not dead, but like, I mean, it's just one part of the mix. You know, we now need to be thinking like that. And I think that's a big mindset shift for a lot of creative people, because they've had the time and space to develop the ideas nicely. It's like, okay, right, well, how do you do that in a way that's, you know, kind of visually impactful, but lands your message in 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds? And, you know, I think there's a big challenge there. But for me, it all comes down to empathy for the user and putting yourself, you know,
Thank you. One thing I want to make sure we do is, there's a couple of questions have come in here on the Q&A, so it's really important we get to them. I'll put this one to Peter. I'll just read it out here from my screen. So this is from one of the attendees. They're saying they're a non-profit company in the arts sector that operates on a shoestring budget. Where would you recommend to focus the main paid advertising efforts?
Yeah, Google Ads would be my first port of call. Facebook would be second. Google offers, like, there's a Google for non-profit accounts, so like, it's free clicks. Basically, you get up to $10,000 a month. So then we'd be able to avail of that. That's a great resource from Google. But like, as the guys have mentioned, you know, bottom of the funnel stuff, Google's perfect for, and that's, like, I suppose TikTok is great, but it's more awareness. Google, you know, Google Ads works wonderful for the bottom of the funnel stuff. That'd be a great first port to call for them.
Okay, great. I think they'll appreciate that feedback. Rochita, could you address this question for us? What's the minimums, again from an attendee today, what's the minimum spend and then an average budget a sole trader or SME would need to spend if outsourcing their ad placement stroke marketing to any of the relevant, or just to any of the, putting it to you, let's say, this question is to any, that's the question. And how also, how long also is the minimum retainer, i.e. monthly, yearly, and is there an option of a one-off intro strategy campaign that the owner could then end up operating themselves?
Yep. Very good question. And I'd say, again, what the minimum spend is completely depends on what your advertising strategy is, how many markets are you operating in, where do you want to start, what maturity level are you already at. But working with media agencies over the last couple of years, like I'm sure Polle, Mark, Peter, you'll all agree with this, that they've come a long way from just being paid advertising experts to actually being consultants and strategic consultants for each of their partner clients. And then it comes down to what is the fee model of the agency, whether it's a retainer-based model or a performance-based model or a flat fee model. But I do believe that a lot of agency partners are out there for one-off campaign strategy as well. And that's their way of showcasing what they can actually prove to the client as worth and then retain them as clients for future. So I'd say minimum spend would depend on a lot of factors, including your business, the competitiveness of the market, and which market are you operating in. Market Finder is a great resource to look at both things. The agencies that are part of the program, which can actually support you in developing the media strategy, but also being able to see what's the ease of doing business in a certain market, what's the competitiveness that you're looking at, and what the average CPCs and CTRs look like to actually be able to benchmark yourself against the rest of the industry.
Okay, thank you for that. And quite a big question here, actually. This could go to the group. I'll actually put this to the group, so feel free, because it's kind of a big statement question. Is remarketing dead? Feel free to jump in, anyone there.
I'll maybe kick things off, but I'd say in a nutshell, no, but I can understand why people would be a bit concerned. So just to give a quick background into why, so some people might be wondering why this question is being asked. So last year, Google announced that they were going to deprecate or remove third-party cookies from Chrome. So third-party cookies is what advertisers would use to essentially try and target consumers across the web. So third-party cookie would be, so we essentially buy that, but that would be someone who's been to a certain website. But what isn't getting removed is first-party cookies. So first-party cookies is what you own. So that is, if someone's been through to your website, my website, I'll know, okay, they've been to multiple pages, they've checked out, they've bought, etc. So we'll still have that. We'll still have CRM data. So that also, that's going to be even more important than ever. So the CRM data is that data that we own about our customers. So that isn't going anywhere, but it's definitely going to be a challenge, but it won't be dead. So for us, for example, we'll still be retargeting people through paid search, through Facebook, for example. And yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's a bit like, say, Y2K back in, well, year 99, year 2000, but there was this big, oh my God, what's going to happen? Is the industry going to be destroyed type thing? But I think I've been looking into it for the last few weeks, talking to multiple different people. I think it's a great headlines and definitely get some clicks online, but there's multiple ways around and multiple ways to improve the kind of the consumer experience. So once third-party cookies are gone, there's going to be other alternatives that can, ensure things are going smoothly. But it'll definitely change, but it's not going to be dead.
Okay. Good. Thank you for that. It's good insights there as well. I'm going to put this question also to Conor. Conor, if you could really summarize, I know I raised it earlier, but I think it's good to get different people's views on the panel on this. What do you think are kind of, for somebody out there listening to this today who's maybe about to set up their new business or have recently set up a new business, or they have an established business, what are your kind of top 3 tips for optimizing their advertising, their paid advertising?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Polle's kind of summary of targeting, bidding, and creative is pretty good. I mean, for me, maybe I kind of might focus on the creative element of that a little bit more. I think, kind of understanding what the user is seeing. Like, I mean, very often I think we look at, we'll do a display ad or whatever, and we'll spend 5 minutes sitting, looking at it on a 32-inch monitor and scrutinizing every inch of it. And the reality is, when a user is on a website, a display ad is in their peripheral vision. So, it's a distraction in terms of what they're on the web page to read the story or whatever. So we've even down to like the basic physiology of, we have lower color saturation and image sharpness in our peripheral vision than we do in our foveal vision. So, kind of understanding, and it's one of the tests that I run with our guys all the time, is drop the color saturation and drop the image sharpness on that. Can I still get the message? And I think it comes back to this whole idea of having empathy for the user and actually putting yourself in their position, as opposed to, as opposed to kind of looking at it in an artificial kind of context. I think understanding what the challenges the user might have, or what, again, we've all got our business, business priorities, but like, what's the user hiring your product to do? And again, been really clear on that value proposition, that value exchange, I think is really, really important. I think far too often we'll kind of put in whatever we have, and again, it might be for our own kind of internal reasons and, politics or whatever it might happen to be. But I think, trying to have, we use a customer empathy map, which is kind of a nice design thinking tool, which again kind of looks at, okay, right, what are the different signals the user is hearing, seeing, feeling, all the rest of it. But again, having that kind of ruthless focus on the user and what the value you as your business can bring to them. So sorry, I've probably gone on a little bit on the creative there, but I think it's really important.
Okay. Thank you, Conor. Rochita, it's an interesting thing I found in being kind of new to focusing more and more on digital in my own business, is the need to learn all the time and learn new things constantly. If you were going to give recommendations to people, again, who are listening in, or also all of us here on the panel and involved today, kind of what would you be suggesting we kind of to school up ourselves? What kind of areas should we trying to learn more about?
Yep, absolutely. And I think more the number of platforms that you have, more number of tools that you have, it's just really hard to keep with pace. And I can speak for myself that I only focus mostly on just Google, and the number of things that are dynamically changing, the number of times I have to read up things to be able to answer things perfectly to my clients is really hard sometimes. And I use regular areas of news to be able to upskill myself, apart from upskilling myself using internal information. If you're just keeping yourself updated with, for example, Mark spoke about cookie-less tracking. If you're just being updated with digital news in general, it's really easy to steer conversations that way. Specific to product knowledge, I'd say you'd have platforms for Facebook, for Google. There's a Google Sales School where you can literally learn end-to-end about the product, also get certified on a lot of these. So we do have exams for Google Analytics or fundamentals for search, which can essentially be your indicator of saying in the market and the industry that you're actually certified for it. And that's a way of building credibility and trust amongst your customers as well. So I'd say keep updated with news. Morning Brew is a great way that I use to keep myself updated on just general industry nuances.
What was that you said, Rochita? What's that you use?
Morning Brew.
Morning Crew.
Yeah, Morning Brew, BREW. It's a US-based newsletter, but really good if you want to just get ahead of understanding where the industry is facing, impact of COVID-19 at the moment, for example, how are digital channels thinking about it, what impact of remote working on advertising, how digital is going to steer more versus omni-channel. Like, it's just a great way to keep yourself upskilled and have those conversations with your customers. And I'd say apart from that, product level certifications is something you can always take to build your industry level expertise.
Okay, thank you very much, Rochita. Polle, I'm going to ask you this one. It's kind of something that's always scratching my head as well, is some of these big businesses, big retail online businesses, they seem to have a lot going on their landing, on their home pages, a lot of products, a lot of images, really busy pages, lots of things. How can they do that and still keep their kind of speeds at good levels so they don't get kind of penalized in terms of search and, and how do they actually manage that?
It's a good question. So Yeah, of course, it depends is always the answer. I think for a lot of the search activities that you do, you don't land people on the homepage. So you land people on a product page, and that product page is probably a little lighter and much more targeted, of course, to what the user is actually looking for. I mean, mine experience is mostly in paid search or Google Ads. So I would hardly land anybody on a homepage. I can imagine that's a super heavy page and therefore also maybe not the best page to load. But I would also expect that those big platforms that they do use, let's say, smart techniques to make sure that the experience is okay and that there's a different version for the mobile website, etc. What I just wanted to add, and maybe also related to what Conor was saying, we assume that if a lot of things that we do, that they will work. So also landing on a homepage or something like this will work better than somewhere else. But actually, and also when it comes down to improving, it's about testing, right? So you need to make sure that you test the best place to land people. And also that's basically also what I forgot to mention of my list of improving stuff. Yeah, try to experiment as much as possible. So build in basically places where you can test, okay, I'm changing this creative, or I'm testing this landing page, or I can test this landing page in a certain way. Always do that, because you'll always learn from that as well. And that kind of takes the assumption out of the work that we do, and we leave it up to the users to really prove if we're right or wrong. And an experiment is never wrong, right? If it fails, so you assumed something and it's wrong, then you learn something. So it's good. An experiment is always good as long as it's set up properly. And in Google Ads, you have the campaign drafts and experiments, you have ad variations. So there's a few things that you can already use actually. Yeah. I think for Google Shopping, I'm deviating or going away from your question, but for Google Shopping, you could actually test as well, but it's a little more difficult. You would need to do a geographic test basically if you want to be testing it properly.
Here's a really good question has come in while you're talking there, Polle. Maybe you could.
Okay. Yeah.
I actually love to know the answer to this one myself as well. What is the best practice to stop competitors stealing your ad budgets if they're clicking on your ads?
I think it's more of a Google question because a lot of the.
No, Rochita, we'll hand that over to Rochita then. Maybe is there any tips you have?
Yeah, and it's a very normal question that we get. So thank you for putting that across as well. I can just explain the methodology of how we are able to segregate invalid clicks that you're not charged for in any format. And those invalid clicks are real time in nature. So if a competitor keeps going back to the ad, we are able to track the VPN to see that, okay, this advertiser is clicking on the homepage, bouncing back, clicking on the ad again, bouncing back. And those little signals help us identify things as invalid clicks, which should be visible in your AdWords account itself, and you're not charged for it in any manner. So I'd say that's the easiest way to be able to trust the system that they're doing their job. However, a lot of times, and I've seen that in multiple cases, that invalid clicks are not filtered as much as we would like. We believe there are more invalid clicks coming in. And that's where you can also reach out to your Google representative, and we can do a thorough check and get it investigated by the risk and policy team to make sure that everything's in place and those invalid clicks are being filtered out. So I'd say in the first go, trust the system. You should be able to see invalid clicks in the system itself, and you are not charged for it in any manner. And if you still think there's discrepancy, reach out to your Google representative.
Very good point is there as well in terms to seeing if the behavior is abnormal, right? So if you have Google Analytics set up properly and Google Ads data is coming in there, you could spot those abnormalities quite easily, and that could be a great trigger then maybe to reach out to Google and see if that can be resolved.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we talked a bit about it. I know I'm going back a little bit, but we also mentioned, like, it's come up a lot, right? And I think how much time we got? We've literally got about 2 minutes left, I think, on the schedule. So I'll put this to Sara actually on this. On product listing / shopping ads, is that something that you're recommending more and more to your clients to use?
Well, where it's relative, you know. So I'm actually running a trial with one large clothing retailer at the moment, and it's not performing the way we wanted to perform. When we dug a little bit deeper, there was just certain lines that just it's not worth their while doing it. So we've taken that out. But what we have realized and what we're looking at now is, now that we switch that off, we're starting to see a drop in the halo effect. So across other areas, you know, it did have a knock-on effect then into last click search term through remarketing. So we're doing a little bit of digging with that at the moment. But what I would say is, with anything like this and with any of the formats, I think particularly it's very difficult to compete against the wishes, obviously depending on what vertical you're in, but you know, there are certain advertisers that have a very strong dominance in PLAs at the moment, and it is very hard for, you know, a general retailer to cut through unless you've got big budget. But what I will say is, you know, again, it's finding those, and maybe it is just finding those long tail niche terms and niche categories where you can dominate that space a little bit more. And that's what I'm starting to find when you go head to head for kind of broad search terms like, you know, summer dress. You don't have a chance. You're going up against Shein, you're going up against Wish, you're going up against all of them. So what we're doing is we're stripping that down and going in for looking at the search query reports or the search term reports, and we're looking for those more long tail, more purposeful intented queries and just segregating those ones as the right things to do. But look, you could have, you know, I'm not dealing with this on the day-to-day agency side, like maybe Mark and so on are dealing with, but that's my experience just being, I suppose, a customer of it. So it's trial and error still for me.
Okay. Would you have a view on that, Peter? How's it working with your clients on shopping?
I suppose it depends again. But like product list ads are fantastic. I think they work really well. I suppose I mentioned it earlier, the smart shopping option from Google, that builds in your dynamic remarketing for the products to the users as well. So it's a fantastic type of campaign. It's really easy to use. The big thing for product listing ads that I think gets overlooked is the merchant center and the feed. So like the better quality feed you have, the better your product list ads work as well. So like it's worth investing in that. And I think that's often overlooked.
Do you get, this question for Google, I think, do you get bumped up a lot by the quality of your photographs, the images that you're using, or does that make a big impact on kind of ranking at all for Rochita?
I'd say it's more of the title and the description of the product that really plays a very important role. Shopping or smart shopping campaigns are one of the campaigns that don't use keywords. They use majority of machine learning, but where are they getting all the data from the feed? And feed essentially includes high quality images, but more so the title and the description of the product, which should exactly match what you're trying to sell. And I'd say like I'm putting a lens of what I do on my day-to-day job is to help expand clients into international markets. I've seen shopping to be a good getaway to actually expand into a market you're completely unaware of. You're competing with the likes of Amazon at the same time, but it's one of the easiest and the most dynamic product to be using. But I agree with Sara that a lot of it still is hit and trial. So I'm not going to give you a biased opinion. It works for certain type of clients. We're still working on how can we make it work for the rest of the industry. But I'd say definitely a product which is a lot of focus from Google's perspective. And we do believe it's going to be one of the most outlier products in the coming years for us.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think that's a good way to kind of sum up today. I'm conscious we're just a couple of minutes over time, but just like to say, look, thanks to everyone on the panel today. Brilliant inputs, great insights, great information. We answered all the questions that were raised prior to today and also live on the chat, on the Q&As. So really, we thank you all for that and hope to meet you all again in some shape or form in the future. And likewise, I hope you'll all meet each other somehow through business. I'm going to hand back either to Molly or Rob, I think, who can wrap up for us here as well. But have a great weekend as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Everybody. Take care.
Everyone.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Guys.
Cheers.